They told you the story of the people of the cave was just allegory, just a miracle tale for children, to show God's power over sleep and time. But what if it's more than that? What if Ashab al-Kahf is the hidden key to unlocking the very nature of time itself? Imagine this. A group of young men enter a cave. They sleep for what seems like a day or two. But when they wake, over 300 years have passed. Not in dreams, not in metaphor, in real physical time. The Quran doesn't just tell the stories, it gives numbers. Thalatha mi'atin sinin wazdadu tis'an, 300 years plus 9. But here's the mystery. The Quran also uses the word am when speaking of how long they thought they'd stayed. Why not use the same word? Because sinin refers to solar years, and am can refer to perceived time, time as felt by the human body. And sana? That appears elsewhere in the Quran when describing hardship, as if the experience of time itself changes depending on consciousness and emotional state. 3 words, 3 dimensions of time: physical, perceptual, emotional. Now let's go deeper. Modern physics tells us that time is not absolute. Einstein proved it. Time bends under gravity. Time slows as you approach the speed of light. Time dilates under extreme conditions. So when the Quran says the people of the cave slept for 300 solar years and 9, was it describing a real phenomenon we're only now beginning to understand? A phenomenon we now call time dilation? But here's the darker secret. There are regions of the Earth, electromagnetic anomalies, where time behaves strangely. From the Bermuda Triangle to the Zone of Silence in Mexico, to Iran's own Rig-e-Gen Desert. In these zones, compasses fail, radio signals die, and according to locals, time seems to stretch or vanish. Could it be the cave of Ashab al-Kahf wasn't just a location, but a portal? A place where time stands still or moves differently because of its cosmic geometry? And what if their sleep wasn't natural? The Quran uses the phrase وَنُقَلِّبُهُمْ. We turned them over, as if their bodies were suspended, not simply asleep. A medically accurate detail, preventing bed sores, preserving circulation. But how would desert sleepers know that in the 7th century? Unless the Quran is hinting at something deeper. A quantum suspension, a kind of cryogenic state where metabolism slows to nearly nothing, where consciousness hibernates, but memory persists. And here's the most shocking part. The Quran says, وَتَحْسَبُهُمْ أَيْقَاظًا وَهُمْ رُكُودٌ. You would think them awake, yet they were asleep. How could that be? Eyes open but no consciousness? That's not ordinary sleep. That's quantum sleep. A state beyond REM, beyond dreams, where the soul leaves the body, but the body doesn't die. What if this isn't just about a cave? What if it's a blueprint for immortality? What if Ashab al-Kahf weren't just sleepers, but travelers? Not across lands, across dimensions of time. Einstein taught us time is not fixed. It flows differently depending on your position in space and your velocity. If you approach the speed of light, time slows for you, while others grow old. That's not fiction. That's proven physics. Now go back to the cave. Ashab al-Kahf entered at one time and emerged centuries later unchanged. They didn't just sleep through time, they skipped it. This is time dilation. But it's also time displacement, and it raises a terrifying possibility that the cave was not bound by our time stream. Now here's what few realize. The Quran never names the location, but hints exist. Surat al-Kahf, verse 17 says, "The sun would rise and decline away from their cave to the right and to the left, while they lay in the midst of it." A cave where the sun passes without ever directly shining in. That's not poetic. That's architectural precision. Researchers have identified multiple sites. The famous one in Rakhim, Jordan, where Byzantine inscriptions were found. A site in Ephesus, Turkey, claimed by early Christians. But also, in northern Iran, near Mount Sabalan, a place where locals still speak of ancient sleepers, glowing caves, and timeless zones. Some say it wasn't a cave at all, but a geomagnetic fault line shielded by natural stone. A zone of zero-point energy, where the electromagnetic grid of Earth is unstable or aligned. Now pair this with modern discoveries in chronobiology. Studies show that electromagnetic fields affect circadian rhythms. Your sense of time, sleep, memory, hormonal cycles, all governed by electrical signals in the brain. What if Ashab al-Kahf weren't just spiritually protected, but physically isolated from the rhythm of the planet? Their biological clocks paused, the decay of aging frozen, and their return synchronized with a specific cosmological shift. But it gets deeper. Many ancient traditions speak of sacred caves as gates between this world and the unseen. In Zoroastrian lore, sacred caves were used by magi to access angelic realms. In Hinduism, the cave is where rishis enter samadhi, timeless stillness. And in Gnostic Christianity, Christ disappears into the wilderness and returns transformed. All echo the same truth. Stillness of the body unlocks movement of the soul. Ashab al-Kahf didn't just avoid persecution. They upgraded from linear time to cosmic time. And when they returned, their language was different. Their money, obsolete. Their story, forgotten. They were out of sync. Aliens in their own land. Proof that while the world aged, they stayed untouched. And here's the final twist. When the people of the town discovered them, they didn't celebrate. They wanted to immortalize them, to build a shrine, a monument. Why? Because humans crave mystery. But institutions fear it, so they entombed it, turned the cave into legend, and the sleepers into saints. But what if that cave was a technology? A naturally occurring portal to higher dimensions of perception? What if Ashab al-Kahf were never meant to stay hidden, but to awaken again? Because the Quran ends their story not with closure, but with a challenge. Say, my Lord knows best their number. None knows them but a few. You are meant to search, to remember, to see beyond the veil of history, into the science of sleep and the secret architecture of time. Why did the sleepers remember nothing of the passage of time? Why did their bodies remain untouched, yet their coins and culture aged? And more importantly, could we do the same? Because what happened in that cave might not be an ancient miracle. It might be a dormant function inside you. Science now confirms you carry genetic memory. Encoded in your DNA are not just physical traits, but ancestral instincts, fears, desires, and perhaps the rhythms of time your ancestors once lived by. And here's the deeper secret. DNA is a fractal antenna. It doesn't just store data. It receives frequencies and emits them. In the sleep of Ashab al-Kahf, it wasn't just their bodies that rested. It was their soul clocks that paused. The Quran doesn't say they died. It says, we turned them to the right and to the left, like divine caretakers rotating an interdimensional traveler to maintain polarity, to preserve alignment. Because when sleep becomes this deep, time ceases to be chronological. It becomes spiritual. In ancient Sufi texts, this is known as Naume Wilayat, the sleep of the saints. A timeless trance where the soul leaves linearity and travels through realms. But here's what's forbidden knowledge today. This isn't fantasy. This is neurological architecture. Your brain's pineal gland, when shielded from external light and sound, releases dimethyltryptamine, DMT, the molecule responsible for dreaming, time distortion, and spiritual visions. Under the right conditions, your own body can induce states where time folds. What if that cave activated this pathway? What if the geomagnetic silence and absolute darkness triggered a quantum pause in the cellular decay of aging? That's not sleep. That's stasis. Now imagine this. Ashab al-Kahf awoke, not just to a new world, but with upgraded awareness. They became witnesses of the reset, carriers of memory from a pre-altered timeline. And maybe, just maybe, that's what terrified the people who found them. Because to remember a different time is to expose the illusion of this one. And here's what the ancients encoded but never explained directly. The purpose of sleep is rehearsal for death. But the sleep of Ashab al-Kahf was a rehearsal for rebirth. So the question is no longer, did it happen? The question is, what if you are next? What if the sleep that once reset time could now reset your consciousness? In a world flooded with noise, with artificial light, and fragmented time, you've forgotten how to rest, how to still your soul, but the blueprint is there, in your DNA, in your glands, in your buried memories. The sleepers weren't just protected, they were activated. And their cave wasn't a hiding place. It was a womb, a spiritual cocoon where time was shed like a skin, and the ones who emerge from that are no longer the same. So now ask yourself, when you lay your head down at night, is your soul really asleep? Or is it waiting for the moment you remember how to wake? What if sleep wasn't always about rest? What if it used to be a ritual? Across ancient civilizations, from Egypt to Iran to Tibet, there are stories of initiation chambers, dark, silent spaces where chosen souls were sent, not to die, but to sleep. Not ordinary sleep. Ritual sleep, timed with the stars, aligned with the equinox, guided by the moon. Because back then, time wasn't just measured, it was lived. And here's where the secret unravels. Ashab al-Kahf didn't just sleep during any season. Their story is tightly woven into the solar and lunar cycles. In fact, the Quran gives us a clue most people overlook. And you would see the sun when it rose, inclining away from their cave to the right, and when it set, passing away from them on the left. Why this detail? Why care about the angle of sunlight? Because the cave wasn't chosen by accident. Its position, its orientation to the sun, its relationship to the equinox was part of the design. During the spring and autumn equinox, the day and night are in perfect balance. And in ancient cosmology, this was seen as the gateway of transitions, between worlds, between lives, between soul states. The cave acted like a cosmic cradle, cradling time itself. And now we discover something even deeper. The calendar used to be lunar, 13 months, 28 days, a 364-day year aligned with the human biorhythm, the woman's cycle, and the orbit of the moon. But over time, this calendar was erased. First by the Babylonians, then by Rome, and finally by the Gregorian reform. What we lost was more than a date system. We lost synchronicity with the earth, with the body, with the cosmos. Ashab al-Kahf slept in natural time, not mechanical time. And that might be why they returned intact. They were preserved in temporal harmony as the world around them spun into artificiality. Ask yourself, why do nearly all sacred rituals, from Ramadan to Easter to Nowruz, still try to sync with equinoxes or moon phases? Because somewhere deep in our collective memory, we remember that these times open portals. Portals through which consciousness can expand, sleep can become sacred, and time can become translucent. Ashab al-Kahf were not just protected, they were calibrated, entrusted to the rhythm of divine cycles to preserve not just knowledge, but alignment. So now here's the real invitation. Could ritual sleep return? Could you realign your body with solar pulses, lunar harmonics, and equinoctial light? Because the sleep they experienced might not be mythology. It might be a map, back to a way of being that modern life made us forget. And in that silence, that cosmic stillness, you don't just rest, you reset. You remember. They didn't leave behind scrolls. They didn't build pyramids. They didn't carve their names into stone. But Ashab al-Kahf changed time. Not just the flow of time, but our relationship to it. Because what they did wasn't a miracle. It was a message, a model, a memory planted forward. They weren't the only ones. They were the reminder, a signal to those who would come much later. To you who live trapped in linear time, measured by clocks, bound by deadlines, haunted by aging, exiled from eternity. But what if time is not the prison, only the illusion? Ashab al-Kahf didn't just sleep, they stepped outside, into a chamber where time bent, folded, paused. And when they emerged, everything had changed. The king, the coins, the calendar, but not their bodies, not their minds, not their souls. They had touched a different axis, one that still exists, but now lies buried beneath noise, schedules, notifications, electric light. Their real legacy wasn't their story, it was their state. A state of preservation without decay, a body in stillness, a mind beyond fear, a soul synced with divine cadence. Call it quantum suspension, call it zero-point consciousness, call it Barzakh, the barrier realm. It doesn't matter. Because the truth is, they remembered how to pause time. And in doing so, they planted the code in the human narrative. A seed, not for the past, for the future. And now the world is shifting again. Calendars are being questioned. Time is accelerating. Memory is fragmenting. Reality is cracking. So here's the whisper from the cave. This is the moment we were meant to remember them. Not to idolize, to activate. Their story is not just a chapter in holy books. It's a blueprint for awakening, for transcending entropy, reclaiming your link to divine time. Because somewhere in your DNA is the echo of that same sleep, that same synchronization, that same cosmic password. Al-Kahf didn't just awaken into a new world. They left us the method, to awaken through this one. So the real question is not, did it happen? The real question is, are you ready to remember? And if you are, the cave is not behind you. It's inside you, and it's opening again.